Senator Rick Santorum, it's so good to see you. I love
It's better
you.
to see you.
Well, it's nice to be in the same room, much less on the same country side of the planet.
Joe Rosenberg is one of my favorite people in the world, just so you know that.
Thank you. Well, likewise. And it's fun to be with you in Iowa. You were the Iowa caucus winner, and you were so dogged in that campaign when for, I don't know, a year there seems scant evidence that this thing could work at all.
Yeah, no money, no press coverage. Other than that, I was going great.
Eating scraps at the pizza ranches. But that was a huge breakthrough. Yeah. It wasn't enough. And I think something you just said in your speech here to the Family Leadership Summit is, well, you were, for those of you who supported Romney, I told you so. Like, it's not that he wasn't even going to govern badly; it's he wasn't going to make it, and he didn't.
Both.
So, yeah, that's a problem. All right, look, there's so much going on right now. You and I are sitting together in the epicenter of American politics. At a time when we're just about to go into the convention. Let's start first with Biden. Then we'll go to Trump.
Okay.
Then we'll go to Israel and Iran and the broader threats. But President Biden, his debate and his press conference last night. Just your assessment of where we are and how dangerous do you think it is?
Well, I the real danger here that's been exposed is how the left has become Stalinist in the way they manipulate the media, they manipulate the government, they use the power of the government not just to prosecute their political enemies. You look at Donald Trump, but also look at abortion protesters who were thrown in jail. And you look at, I saw a clip the other day of the military now calling National Right to Life a terrorist organization. And so you have you have the government being weaponized against the American public if you're not repeating the orthodoxy from what the left wants. And the exposure of Biden, who has been, I won't say a vegetable, but someone who is not completely there, and the fact that the media complicitly allowed him to stay away from press conferences, to stay away from the media, to be protected, and not do any investigative reporting as to whether he was competent or not. They just
Where's Bob Woodward when you need him?
They let it go. And any time that Republicans, or I work for Newsmax, that we would say, look at how decrepit he is, it was cheap fakes, and you were splicing together things. It's not real, until it became obvious that Biden was a liability. And it wasn't that he performed bad. Yes, he performed badly, but he went from someone they could protect, and the media was mad, and the Democratic donors were mad. Not
shocked. They seemed shocked by how bad it looked.
They were pissed.
Okay.
That the Biden folks didn't protect the lie, that they put him out there and exposed all these characters who you heard George Clooney knew weeks ago.
Right.
Everybody knew weeks ago.
Right.
Chuck Todd knew 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Right.
A senior cabinet secretary told me he can't keep doing this, can he?
So they all knew, but they all were in on it.
Yeah.
And the fact that Biden allowed himself to go out there and expose himself for who he really is really made them mad, because it made them look bad. And
because they were going to lose all the things they care about.
And that's right. And now he's a loser, so we got to get rid of it. And the interesting thing is that Joe Biden is one stubborn guy. And he also is someone who,
you've spent time with him over many years.
Battled with him for 12 years, opposed everything he wanted to do on the national security front for 12 years. And he has always been delusional in the sense that his ego is huge and his perception of himself is much grander and greater than any rational person would ever conceive. And so you have someone who's stubborn, who has the dream that he has always wanted, which is to be the president, and he doesn't see himself in reality. I don't see that man going anywhere. And I've said that. I have been consistent over the last several weeks since I said he'll be on the ticket. He's not going anywhere. And even though I was a little nervous this week that might change, I'm still convinced that unless the Democratic Party in unison is in full revolt, which could persuade enough delegates to go the other way before the convention, Biden isn't going to walk away himself.
Donald Trump said this week at a rally something that I've heard as a sort of a low buzz for several years, that Kamala Harris was chosen to be the vice president as insurance. Yes. Is that fair? I mean, now otherwise you'd have a total revolt or a 25th Amendment move. Now, again, not because Joe Biden is completely incapable, but dangerous enough that you just don't know at the key moment if he's able to do this.
Yeah, and
aside from his policies, which have been bad enough for the last 4 years, but can he actually do the job?
I don't.
Between now and January,
the genius of him picking Kamala Harris as insurance is real, and I think he.
I thought that was unfair when somebody said that to me several years ago.
It's absolutely real, and if you look at it, if you're right, if there was, pick 40 other Democratic senators who would be sitting there other than Bernie Sanders, and Joe Biden would have been forced off the stage a while ago. But they realize she's no better than he is. In fact, I was watching Morning Joe this morning, and their assessment was, yes, she has a lower floor. She could do worse than Biden, far worse, but she has a higher ceiling. And their feeling is that Biden's ceiling right now is losing by a little. And so they're willing, some aren't. Some are willing to take the risk that Harris might win, right, but a lot aren't willing to take the risk that she'll tank and do actually worse than Biden.
And take out the House, or the Senate and everything
and
that was
split the party and doing everything else. So there's a big calculation, and it's not, to be very clear, about what's in the best interest of the country.
Yeah.
It's whether they can win or not. That's all they care about.
2 years ago, I had former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on the Rosenberg report, and I asked him, do you think the next 2 years of the Biden administration becomes the most dangerous 2 years in modern American history, certainly in the 21st century, I guess post 9/11, but because Biden's weakness post Afghanistan, and we weren't even at. I don't remember now when I asked him if Russia invaded Ukraine, but basically you had such weakness that you sort of had an invitation.
Absolutely.
If China's thinking of taking Taiwan,
I think
we're ahead of schedule, but wouldn't you go get it now? I mean, Iran has obviously made their move against Israel. We'll get back to that in a moment because you're an expert on Iran and you've been such a stalwart friend of Israel. But, just aside from whether Biden stays on the ticket and wins, the next 4 months is dangerous, isn't it? Is it not?
Well, you mentioned, Russia saw the weakness and acted.
Iran didn't move under
didn't move under
Trump when supposedly Trump was, such a sycophant for Vladimir Putin.
Well, when Biden says, as long as it's a limited invasion, we'll be okay. Wow. Iran moved because they believe Biden, and as we've seen, would not be able to sustain support for Israel, and they would be successful at some level. North Korea, I don't know where North Korea goes at this point. I guess they could go into the south. They might. China might. And you're right. Why wouldn't they right now? Particularly now when the Democratic Party and Washington is in such chaos, and the belief is that Joe Biden isn't running the country anymore. We are inviting people to test America. And that's not a good thing. And I will give credit. You look at Comer, the chair of the House Investigations Committee. He actually subpoenaed 3 Biden close folks in the White House to come and testify about it. Now, that doesn't make any sense if what you care about is keeping Biden on the ticket because you think he's going to win. It only makes any sense if Republicans are actually, and I think they are, concerned about the country right now. Yeah. And I think one of the things I'm frequently appreciative of conservatives is they actually try to do the right thing. And whereas the other side always wants to do the thing that keeps them in power. That's all they care about.
Okay. All right. Let's shift then to this enormous opportunity for former President Donald Trump.
Yeah.
2 months ago, things were looking pretty bad. You got 34 state felony convictions. Now, again, I think a lot of people have discounted that as
they did.
That's crazy. The judge even actually financially gave to Biden. So, but that we were heading into uncharted waters. We are further out into uncharted waters. First, with no American president or nominee in history has had any felony conviction, much less 34.
Take a step back and think about, we have two guys who are in and around 80 years old. One is a convicted felon. The other is mentally incompetent. And this is our choices for the leadership of the free world. Yeah. Now, I would make the argument that Trump's convictions are in fact fraudulent. It's a result of the Stalinist activity
you said of the weaponizing of the legal
justice
system.
Yeah, weaponizing the justice system. So,
but still,
I mean, if you're
for an independent, somebody who's not paying attention, who's not an ideologue, thinking, I don't know, that seems pretty bad. But it hasn't seemed to affect the polls. And right at that moment, Trump has been given a few gifts from God. It would seem over time, which is as everyone's focusing on him, and you think, all right, it may take a month for these polls to start. It's summer. People are adjusting. That they're processing. They're at Disney World or wherever. Suddenly, Biden goes into meltdown mode, and the press actually turns on him almost en masse, and that takes all the attention off of Trump. I mean, that's
well. Here, if again, take the polls with a grain of salt.
Sure.
But after the conviction, Trump's numbers didn't change much. Yeah. After the debate, Biden's numbers didn't change much. You might want to make the case that this race is pretty well baked.
Well,
right?
State by state, it seems to be that Biden is softening. You don't think so?
Yeah. Again, if you look at some states, there was a poll out over the weekend that had him up in Wisconsin and Michigan. Okay. Yeah, but they're always still within the margin of error. And you would think after a performance like that and what happened, unlike Trump, which you can, I think, write off as saying it's just a political attack and it's a weaponization and lawfare and all that stuff. And I think it's easy for supporters of Trump to sort of dismiss
but
this.
It's the key small percentage in swing states in a previously super close election that was contested. And so you'd think, well, this could have an effect.
And the same thing, when you have a debate performance like Biden had, you would think those people would swing the other way. Yeah. But maybe a few have, but it's not, you're saying softening. Right. But given that performance, softening? I mean,
well, you're right, yes.
I mean, it should be collapse, right? It should be a meltdown. So, and you saw a poll came out this morning that has Biden up 2 points nationwide, which again is pretty much where he was before all this. So I don't know what to make of it other than the fact that it looks like both camps, these tribal atmosphere that we have in this country, are standing by their man, no matter what the situation is, because of the hatred of the other side. Yeah. And we'll wait and see how that all plays out.
Okay. All right. Listen, Rick, I want you to ask you, who should I pick as my vice presidential nominee? I mean, it should be you, but it's not going to be. So, seriously though, we are within hours, probably a few
Monday.
days. I think we're probably talking Monday.
I think Monday. I
think Trump was actually considering the possibility of floating it out earlier, but when your enemy is in so much trouble, you just let them have their moment. And he's building a lot of suspense.
Yep.
So first, does this vice presidential pick matter?
Yes.
Why?
I think they all matter. I mean, people say they don't. But they all matter to some degree. I think this one matters more, only because of two things. Number one, Donald Trump's not a young man either. Now he's very vibrant and all that kind of stuff, but he's not a young man, and so he'll be compared.
He's older. Both of them are older than Reagan was when everyone was like, Reagan's way over the hill. I'm not going to use my opponent's youth and inexperience against him for political purposes. That he was like 10 years younger at that point.
No, and so it's an issue, and it's also an issue of Trump's judgment, and.
In other words, getting a window into his judgment, who he picks. Right. And when he picked Mike Pence, I was shocked, and it helped me because I wasn't thinking I was going in that direction at all.
His vice presidential pick helped him. He picked a solid guy who's a solid conservative who helped
He didn't need Indiana, but he did need to shore up and strengthen evangelicals who were wavering.
Exactly.
Myself included.
So in this case, I think what he sees is he needs to pick someone that is capable to be president. So you have to check that box. And
nobody can have that question. Nobody can be like, what?
What? Yeah, and I think there's only one person on the list that you would have to sort of say, what? Maybe he doesn't have the.
And that is?
J.D. Vance. I mean, the guy's been a senator for a year and a half, and didn't really do much before that. I don't know is necessarily someone.
He wrote a best-selling book.
Yeah, great. Okay, he's an author. Well, which of course
does not qualify me to be the next president or vice president.
Joe Rosenberg to be president, right? Because you're much more of an author than he is. So I think that would be a questionable choice, and he would get blowback on that. I think the other reason you get blowback on J.D. Vance is on a lot of his national security positions, which are very isolationist and not as strong.
I think he's. Yeah, it's not even Trump's position, let's say, on Ukraine. It's Tucker Carlson's position.
Exactly. He's a Rand Paul, Tucker Carlson isolationist. Yeah. And I think that, given all the other things...
That might be... Donald Trump Jr. might feel happy about that, and one argue that he's pushing that, and some MAGA, but I don't know if that erases worries within the party or creates them.
I think it creates worries and unnecessarily. JB will have his chance. I mean, he's a young guy. He'll have plenty of opportunities to sort of make his way. I think that the safer choices are Rubio and Burgum.
All right, Rubio. Okay, well, let me just press you. So, yes, I mean, I love Marco Rubio. There's no question about it. And he's read some of my books and likes them. So who doesn't love that? Yeah, exactly. So that he passes the Pence-Pompeo test. But
more importantly, the Rosenberg test.
But you do have the Florida constitutional issue.
Yeah, that's not. I mean,
you don't think so?
No. I mean, he can move.
Well, he's a senior senator from Florida.
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, you have to be the senator.
If he was a Democrat, it wouldn't matter. Don't you think it's going to be?
No. And there's also a question as to whether that really applies anymore. I mean, the reason was because when it was put in place is that the person who got second place was automatically in line for presidency, and it's a little. The Constitution has changed since that original language was put in. The country has changed since the original language was put in. So I don't think
an originalist. I'm surprised,
but my point is that I think it's okay for him to move because you can't be from the same state at the time you're sworn in. Okay. That's what it says, and he could move to Nevada. He's a senator. Right. He has to be a senator at the time he's sworn in.
Why wouldn't Trump move to Bedminster, New Jersey? I mean, what? Probably for taxes, I would say.
I would say that would be the reason.
But on the other hand, it's the more obvious. I do have a home. I do have a life there. Well, I have a country club, whatever.
People have said that, Rubio was born in Nevada and, has roots there and could easily, move back to Nevada.
Okay.
And if he wins...
You don't think Trump is discounting it because of this?
Obviously, he wouldn't be on the list.
Well, he could be for other reasons.
Don't think so.
Okay.
I think...
You think this is a real list,
I think that's a real list.
He's not floating this out and then he's going to do...
well, it's Donald Trump.
Well, you know him better than me.
Don't ever say that. I mean, it could be a head fake, but I suspect they
have definitely warmed up.
He did say
a few years ago we would not have even imagined Marco Rubio after that 2020 or 2016. Yeah, that didn't look good.
Well, he did say, number one, that the person who he's picking was going to be at the debate, and. So there were other people to debate other than those four or five guys that are, you got Carson and you got, Rubio and
Burgum. Tim Scott.
Tim Scott
I just spent an hour with him Wednesday.
There could be a head fake and you could pick someone like a Scott or a Carson or somebody. Okay. But to pick, Joe Rosenberg, I mean, that's just he's not going to pick someone from off the radar.
That's good. Dual citizenship, I think, would also throw. Yeah, that could be an issue. Talk about the loyalty issue. All right, why are we hearing so much about Burgum?
I think Trump likes him. Yeah. I think he's someone who is like Pence. He's not flashy. He won't upstage Trump. Mm-hmm. He'll be a good soldier, and Trump likes pedigrees. Trump, if you look at his picks, for way back when he first started picking people, I got the president of Exxon to be Secretary of State, and all these guys on the
Central
Supreme
casting
Court,
and the look in the field.
I got guys from Harvard and Yale, and
Although I think he, It'd be interesting. I think he also has learned how to fire more people and thinking maybe I have a better instinct now than I did.
He still likes pedigrees.
8 years ago.
I mean, because I think that, he's the apprentice.
What about Governor Youngkin in Virginia that changes the dynamic? I don't think he was at the debate,
He wasn't at the debate, number one. And number two, he's taller than Trump. And I mean, he is.
Yes, you're the first person to raise that issue. It was like Bolton had the mustache, but he still became the national security advisor. That didn't go well.
But I would just say that Trump is a communicator, and I think him walking out there on stage with someone who's a vice president who's taller than he is.
So you think little Marco
I'm looking, I'm not saying this and being criticized. I'm not being critical.
No, but
of
you're
Trump
just trying to assess him. But
I mean, I can understand that. Do you want a vice president who towers over you?
Okay.
Probably not. Okay. I mean, it's probably
even if it adds a state that you're not.
Well, but it's a perception thing. I mean, I don't think vice presidents add states.
What about someone like, again, far afield, not on the list really, but Sarah Huckabee Sanders?
I was all for Sarah Huckabee.
I think she's fantastic.
I think she'd be great.
Is it too early?
Be a good pick. Too early.
She's only been the governor for a few years.
She made comments that she didn't want to do that. I mean, she has a young family, and being able to be home in Arkansas and have the family support and things. Not that you wouldn't have that in Washington, but it's a tough environment to raise little kids in. And and the travel schedule. I mean, just travel around Arkansas as opposed to travel around the world. Yeah. I mean, I can get what she's doing.
But she would electrify a conservative, and there would be a surprise factor. There's a woman factor. There's a deep conservative, though she's more pro-life than him. So in that one thing that I have thought
he signed a pro-life bill.
Well, exactly. So if you're going to have a woman, then the question is, you're probably not doing just for that reason. But if you have that reason, and you now have somebody who's signed a 6-week bill, I think Trump doesn't want to do this.
Well, that's what Burgum signed a 6-week bill.
Well, so that's why I'm thinking it's
and he
may
actually
not be
mentioned
him.
that the other day in an interview, that he didn't necessarily, it's a state thing and they can do the thing, but he wasn't in agreement with it. So that's why if you just look at it, I think Rubio sort of is a little bit ascendant.
But to my dismay, or actually surprise, he hedged a little bit on the Republican pro-life plank. Rubio did, which I told me he's definitely in the running, and Vance did too.
You saw a lot of. It's interesting. You have pro-life groups out there, and I think if you look at the reaction from the different pro-life groups from what happened at the convention, at the platform, the ones that are more based, pragmatic, political versus religious, sectarian. They were more principled, hate to say it that way, but they were. And the ones that were more political saw that as, I've talked to some people from SBA and others, and they said, it could have been worse. And so we were
and Roe v. Wade has already been done. So the effect day to day in the states remains. It's not, Trump is not going to sign a 6-week bill.
No, he's not.
I'm not sure if he's going to sign any bill.
And
I don't know,
it just shows that what Trump really is, which he's pragmatic. He's not an ideologue. He's not someone like me who has spent their lives fighting for these principles because you believe in these things. He's a businessman. He'll make deals. He has a notion of a direction he'd like to take the country.
Well, and he's been the most successful pro-life president in history, so you've got to give him some credit and some space, I think.
You can't argue with that.
Just to wrap up on this, and then I obviously need to ask you about Israel and the situation in the Middle East. Ironically, for All Israel News, a Rosenberg report, that's what we normally would lead with. But here we are, we're in Iowa, we're at this big moment. Who do you think he's gonna pick, because you know him, and then who do you think he ought to pick? And is there a difference between the two?
Yeah, anybody who actually thinks they know who Trump's going to pick, I think, is crazy. Trump does unpredictable things.
Putting all the calculations together, who do you think is the most likely? Do you think it's Rubio because of what you're saying?
I think right now I would say Rubio is the most likely, and I would have said Burgum is the most likely before. But I think the abortion thing might be a problem for him. That's sort of the negative for him. The other, he really doesn't bring anything to the table other than stability.
Two white billionaires. So you don't think that
That's what I'm
that
saying.
helps?
The fact that Marco brings, an Hispanic and a great
Cuban especially,
great personal story.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's again, it's to a voter group he's actually trying to reach out to, and Marco, who's very fluent in Spanish, can reach out to that group. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that. The negative side of Rubio is that there's a lot of video there of Marco saying very nasty things about Donald Trump.
And yet that might help in a strange way, in a flip, because as long as he doesn't act like a sycophant, which he's not.
No.
I mean, we both know him. Look, we've disagreed on some serious issues, and we've had some dust-ups. Yeah. But to bring the party together, the country together, I can see that argument.
Yeah, but my point is, Trump's not going to like Joe Biden running commercials all the way through.
Well, that's true.
It'll.
All right. Then
it will not be. He will not be.
You haven't
happy
spent
about
much
that.
time on Senator Tim Scott, and since I just spent an hour with him interviewing him, he, Trump has talked a lot about, and his team has talked a lot about, wow, could we get 15, 20, maybe 25% of the African American vote? I think he believes he can do it, and I actually think Trump could do it. Is that the safer? If you're picking two qualified senators who've got a lot of personal charisma and a great personal story. I mean, the two of them, Rubio and Scott, are really extraordinary people. They are the type of Republicans that we think, wow, the type of Republican you were in your day when we think about the whole immigrant story and the blue collar story. Those two guys get blue collar conservatism.
Chick-fil-A, working at
Chick-fil-A, exactly, or Rubio. So, is there a stronger case for Tim Scott, a safer case?
I don't know if it's a safer case. I think the safer case, Marco has more experience, and
you don't have the constitutional issue, though.
Well, yeah.
You don't think that's an issue? Okay.
I don't think that.
That's interesting.
Not an issue. He
You're
can
a lawyer,
move.
so
He's allowed to move.
Okay,
I mean, there's no limitation on him moving. And again, he doesn't have to give up being senator from Florida because he has to be a Florida resident at the time he's sworn in. Doesn't say anything about you.
If they don't win,
he'll move back.
Marco Rubio's re-election campaign is, I'm your senator, but I took a brief vacation someplace else.
He didn't. He can stay a senator and not live in the state. That's not. I think you're making more of that issue than I can tell you that the Trump campaign is making. They don't see this as a big issue. And,
So on balance, you think that Rubio is the stronger case than Scott?
Well, I think he's a strong case for one major reason, and that is that I think Trump's potential with Hispanics, number one, they're three times the size of the black vote. And they are much more likely to swing than African Americans. And so, and they are in...
Especially if Kamala Harris either becomes the nominee or is still on the ticket, there's a loyalty factor there, maybe?
Yes, and they're in larger numbers in the swing states. So it makes more sense to go after an easier vote.
All right. Israel. Just your assessment of Biden. Biden seems, I'm using the term schizophrenic, and I don't mean that as a medical term, but I believe he loves Israel, and I believe he is a Zionist. And I think he's probably the best that the Democratic Party has on Israel at this point. But oh my gosh, that is not looking particularly good. He has sided with Chuck Schumer on essentially a regime change in Israel to get Netanyahu out. He hasn't called for regime change in Russia, China, Turkey, North Korea. He's slow walking weapons to an ally in a hot war. I mean, how do you assess what? Doesn't Joe Biden can he at least be strong on one issue, standing with an ally in the midst of a war?
The way I described Joe Biden, I did an interview on CNN for a big profile piece they were doing with Biden prior to the 2020 election, and they said, "How would you describe Joe Biden?" I'd say he's the guy in the canoe who finds the deepest part of the river, the channel in the river, and stays there. And so, as a Democrat, he has always been in the deepest well, if you will, the deepest channel in the river. And if the Democratic Party goes this way to the right, he just goes with the channel. And if it makes a hard, sharp left, he just stays in the middle. And he's always done that. He's moved all over the place in his political career, but has always stayed right in the center of the Democratic Party. He's had in this compliment to him, he has a good sense of where the Democratic Party is and where it's going. And He is in the middle of a Democratic Party that is anti-Zionist, I would argue anti-Semitic. And why? Because they believe in cultural Marxism. And so Jews are the powerful, the Palestinians are the powerless, and therefore we're for the Palestinians. And that's, so it's, I don't think it's, candidly, I don't think it's anti-Semitism. I don't think—
Not from Biden himself, of course.
Or even from the left. I think it fits
with their
it fits in the intersectional, Marxist culture, Marxist ideology.
So if we as Jews are out of the land, go back. If we're in the land, get out. Right. Go back to Europe.
Well, the problem is that they will point to, well, even if you get thrown out of the land, you're still successful and you're still doing fine. Now, if you end up with a pogrom and you're in villages and you have no money—
That's my family escaping out of Russia.
Then they'll be on your side. So you have to hit the bottom. Okay. Once you go to the bottom—
I thought October 7th was the bottom. To not see us at the bottom. Anyway, I hear your point.
That's
all
not
right,
the way.
All right, last question though, and I'm really enjoying this conversation. I'm so glad to see you. I'm concerned that the situation in the north of Israel, in Lebanon, Hezbollah, is about to get— it is getting worse. I'm off the island for a couple months talking about what we're facing. But when I get back, I think unless God intervenes in some dramatic way through I can't even see it right now. I can't see how this isn't going to become an apocalyptic war. In 2006, 4,000 missiles were fired at us by Hezbollah in a month. Now they have 150,000 missiles, so they could do 4,000 missiles a day for a month and still have reserves. So.
And Iran's going to feed them more.
So I guess the question for you as an Iran expert and a guy who really focused on the Iran threat for years, talked about the gathering storm of radical Islamism, but particularly Iran. Let's wrap up with this question. If Israel has to go into a full-on invasion and a massive missile war with Hezbollah, should it start with a preemptive strike against Iran's nuclear facilities?
I don't see how you don't do that. You can't, if the reports are true that what you're hearing, that they're up to 90% and that they're, within X number of months away from having enough weapons grade, to get to weapons grade material, you can't let them have that breakthrough. You just can't. Now, how they strike, what they do, they have to do something, because this is existential for Israel. They know, as you know, and I think Joe Biden knows, but he chooses not to believe it. We all have cognitive dissonance, things we know to be true, and then we just don't believe them because it's not convenient for us to believe.
Or we let other things prioritize.
Or we say, well, that may be true, but other things are more important than that. You're right. But I think he knows that the mullahs will hit Israel with a bomb. Now, he may say, well, they'll be able to block it. I don't know, you want an exploding nuclear bomb over Jordan, it may not be a great idea, right? But the reality is, they're going to use it. Why? Because they say they are, and they pretty much do whatever they say they're going to do. And so I don't think Israel has a choice. I think they have to do something. Obviously, the more covert it is, probably the better it is for them. But they're wasting time, in my opinion. They can't wait much longer.
Biden's leverage in terms of flowing, or in this case, not flowing weapons and resupply ammunition and missiles interceptors to Israel is a huge problem, because we are burning through ammo and we're burning through missile interceptors at a very high rate. And that was just Gaza. And if we have to go in a full-on—
I'll ask you this question. Is there any production capability within Israel to replace
Very little, because no one imagined a scenario in which the number one ally and the great, funder and protector of Israel would bail on us in the middle of a hot war. It's not, I think, in Israel's strategic doctrine, right?
Doesn't the administration realize that if they don't provide this material, and more civilians start dying as a result of it, that will simply ramp up the war to where Israel has to act in a bit stronger way?
I think, though, I said we were going to close. We need to close. Again, this is such a great conversation. Look, I think Biden and his team genuinely believe that Iran is not the major threat right now. I think they believe that their number one priority is to put Israel in a headlock and get us to stop in Gaza, and somehow diffuse in Lebanon. And because what is
the plan?
I'll tell you.
What's the plan?
No, I know what Biden and Blinken and Sullivan want most is a Saudi American Israeli deal. One, because they think it's a good idea, but more importantly, because they think that's a big win, that he has no prospect of for any foreign policy success. Ironically, because Biden was so against the Saudis, so against Mohammed bin Salman, and yet I now believe they believe that this is a win for them. Now, it didn't help. Trump got 4 deals, and it didn't help him win in 2020. So I think we want that deal, and I'm happy if the Biden team can stay focused enough to get something done. I think Israel would get a better deal under Trump, but I think getting stuff through the Senate that needs to be done, not on the Israel side, but on the Saudi-U.S. side, actually getting the blessing of a Democratic president, getting through a Democratic Senate, is probably the better thing for the U.S., Saudis, and for Israel. But I actually think the administration is myopic right now.
I don't see any likelihood of that happening in this very compressed time frame.
Well, and now you add the Biden team is in meltdown, and they're totally internally. But I think that's what they were thinking. If you look at the number of frequent flyer miles that Blinken and Sullivan have racked up into Riyadh and Jerusalem, but mostly Riyadh over the last 6 months, I would say that's your best way of understanding why are they pushing that so hard, and that in their mind requires a permanent ceasefire rather than victory, rather than an Israeli victory. It's just wrong.
It is wrong.
It's just wrong.
Yeah.
Last word.
Well, the good news is on Israel is I think that it is likely that Trump is going to win this election, and that Republicans.
Though you think it's closer, you don't think it's not shaping up to be a blowout.
It could.
Okay,
but right now, I think it's a blowout is like 3 or 4 points. I mean, it's not not Reagan, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a blowout is 310 electoral votes instead of 270, right? I mean, so it's not you win a few more states, but the reality is that the likelihood of that is increasing, and even if Harris comes in, I still feel pretty comfortable that the Republicans will win, and likely take the Senate. So. House, I don't know, depends on how big the win is at the top of the ticket, which means a different policy toward Israel that will be much more favorable to them. And as you know, the stronger the U.S. is, the more reasonable the other side is when it comes to a deal, or frankly for Israel to actually do what they need to do, which is to succeed and to eliminate Hamas.
I'm keeping my word. You get the last word. But let's end with this thought, at least as a thought exercise for people to Trump's relationship to Netanyahu. Icy and F-bombs. So this is going to be very interesting. Israel does need Trump, I think, in the White House in comparison. But there's going to be some interesting repair work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
So, but
I mean,
I'm sure they can both do it.
Yeah, I was going to say both of them are.
If Trump can make up with Marco Rubio, he can make up with Bibi Netanyahu.
Both of them are.
But it is interesting.
Consummate tacticians, and so I think it will be in both of their interests to figure out a way forward on this, and they will work together. And Trump will say, "Oh, I've always had a great relationship with Bibi." I mean, just like he's doing with Rubio and everybody else. If it's in his interest to forget about the past, he'll do it.
Thank you, Rick Santorum. So glad to spend time with you. I appreciate it much more than I even asked for your time. Thank you.
Yeah, 10 minutes.
I know. I'm sorry.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.